For those of you who just tuning in now to the Rocha Revolution, I am so honored, and I want to thank everybody for being here this week. I am honored to be joined by maybe my oldest friend that I've actually had on this podcast, Amy. Amy Pritchard joining us. Amy, thanks for being here.
I'm super happy to be with you, Chuck. Thanks for having me. Thanks for inviting me.
Let's show some age. You don't have to say you're old because you're very young, but these white hairs on my face, I cannot run away from. How long have we known each other?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say 30 years.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Almost on the nose, I think, right? Because I think it was Project 96, Project 95, 96, somewhere in that range, right? That was for folks who aren't familiar with it, was a project that was launched by a lot of our labor friends after the 94 election. In a moment not terribly dissimilar to where we are now and radically different all at the same time, right? But you worked on that, and I did some projects with it as well. So that's my memory of
Labor
us.
96. Labor 96 was the AFL-CIO's first time of taking all of the money that they used to put into the DCCC and the DNC, and they invested it they put it into their membership in mobilizing members, going member to member in marginal congressional seats that, to Amy's point, we had just lost 2 years prior when the Republicans wiped our butts in that election. And a lot of that had to do with anxiety around free trade agreements and folks losing their jobs, right, Amy?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it was, the midterm after the Clinton win. And as we know, we tend to swing back and forth a little bit. It was also when, I mean, I can't remember exactly, you might, but Democrats had held the House at that point for decades, right? Like,
70 years.
yeah, it was decades. So it didn't swing back and forth the way we have since then, right? Um, and I think folks were fed up and for a lot of good reasons. When one party I think has power for too long, gets kind of fat and lazy and uh doesn't don't remember where they came from or who they serve.
I think you're exactly right. And our past, our firms, our work has crisscrossed now for over 30 years, whether it was when I was at the Steelworkers as the political director, when
Yep.
I started the firm now, it's hard to say this now, Amy, my firm is 16 years old. Uh, and I remember when Amy, who's always been a consultant, working around nonprofit work, working around helping folks build power, build diversity in politics, consulting. We're going to get to that in a little bit, but maybe we take a moment and I step back and you can explain the evolution of what we call now gain power. It wasn't always gain power. Now there's even global gain. You have taken a vision of helping people, organizing and educating folks, and built it into this thing which really still out there today. And really, in my opinion, the only thing of its kind that's actually doing all this kind of work.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, Gain Power is now just over 6 years old, but to your point, it was a evolution from what was originally called Democratic Gain, and it was more than a rebranding. So I do think of them as kind of different phases, but the commonality is to support the folks who do this work and to particularly, I usually say, diversify, demystify, and democratize our own democracy work, which, for a whole host of reasons that you and I could talk about all day long, has really been just this exclusive space that has not always welcomed in women and people of color and anyone from a background that might be different from those who hold control and power themselves. So we originally called it Democratic Gain, and we started after. Really, it was after McCain-Feingold, but we launched in 2004, and I think that was a marker for a lot of organizations, some of which are still around too. The American Votes, Democracy. I mean, there was a lot that happened that sprung out of that campaign finance reform. And we launched in part, and the parties have changed a lot in for better or worse, depending upon the day of the week you might think about it, because of those campaign finance reforms. We used to do things a lot more coordinated, and the party, particularly the DNC, did a lot more to support talent. Still not enough even then, but they, um, so we launched and really it's still the busiest time. And that time it was just after the 2000, it was in 2003, 2004. Our real program started in 2004, post-election. We're always busy post-election because we help people all year round in the 2-year cycles that evolve into 4-year cycles and 6-year cycles and on and on. But it's really about helping talent who too often are just kind of tossed to the wind, win or lose, after an election, right? And then we rebuild all over again, start from scratch, you know. But we have really tried to create space going back then and still today, for folks who we think are missing in the movement, in representing the communities that we, the party, we, the left, whatever you want to call our movement space on any given day, seek to represent, but rarely do.
For those of you listening, what Amy's describing is every election cycle, when the election's over, everybody gets laid off. Everybody loses their job. Sometimes you win and you maybe get to go to Congress or a state house, but that's really the exception, not the rule. If you're that lowly field organizer or that political director, you've got to be thinking about your next place to go to work. And this campaign space is really hell on people's lives. Me and Amy did it before there was an internet, when it was really hell, when we lived on people's couches and there was not a staff union. And what she's created, and it's and built from way beyond just this, but a place where folks can come and give their resume, and there's job boards, there's training, there's mentorship. I was proud to be on the board and help find other advisory board members and find folks that could mentor and have career fairs. Like that don't happen without Amy Pritchard and I Lift You Up. I think it's important though, for folks that are listening, to take a step back and I like this story, and I've been asking this of the candidates, so I need to ask it of operatives, and you may be the first true operative beside my business partner who's been on it. What drew you to this work, and how did you even get started doing political campaigns?
I had a more than a deja vu moment about a week ago and shared this story recently, because I happened to go into Boston, and walk by the state house, and that was the first place I had a job, when I was still in college. I call it like I had the Forrest Gump life. I just fell into these like situations that I really didn't even understand the access and the opportunity that I was given. And I really like I didn't have a political family. I didn't really grow up around anyone who was political, so it wasn't something I came to what I would call naturally. But I did have an opportunity when I was in high school to do a program that probably analogous to like close up, these ones where they take high school students, but in our case it was run around the state house and learn about state government. And I just that sort of got a spark then, and I remember asking my state rep, I'm like, "I wanna work here." And she said, "Well, we get interns when you're in college." And I followed up with her a couple of years later. I'm like, "Okay, I'm ready." And I got what I still kind of am blown away by, but it was just a job. And I say job because I was paid. It was a paid internship, which was pretty rare, still not as prevalent as it should be, but certainly rare back then. Um, I just was supposed to work for my state rep, but because she was in leadership, she was first woman's legislator in leadership at the time, and she gave me away to this commission that was called the John F. Kennedy Memorial Commission, and it had the simplest mission, which was there was no memorial to President John F. Kennedy at the Massachusetts State House. And so these legislators got a little bit of funding, and literally their only purpose was, and I'm going to write something about this because I took a picture. We was to literally build a memorial to John F. Kennedy. But here I am, like I said, having never worked in politics, having never having any access. My parents weren't donors. My mom was. I like to think of her as an activist, but not even the way we think of them today. Um, but I got assigned a staff role, which is to say I got given to a commission that had no budget, therefore they had no staff. So the intern was the only staff. And my job was to do this national artist search, to find an artist to build a memorial to John F. Kennedy. And that memorial included uh, commission included uh, Jacqueline Onassis, John Kennedy Jr.,
What?
Carolyn Kennedy, a handful of state reps, and then some other folks who were on the Kennedy Library Board. And I got immediately thrust into this Kennedy orbit, and it was pretty amazing. It also happened to be the very same year that Tip O'Neill, folks who don't remember that name, he was the Speaker of the House at the time, who also happened to be my congressperson, retired. And Joe Kennedy, um, uh, which one was he's the third. He's the Joe Kennedy the second, not to be confused with Joe Kennedy the third, but ran for that seat. And I got all introduced to all these Kennedy people. So they asked if I would work on their campaign. And that was my first campaign in 40 years ago. I can say it's true. 40 years ago,
Wow.
1986. So, yeah. And I met some pretty amazing people. And then turned out my governor ran for president. And suddenly I went from the state house to working on a presidential campaign. And I am still friends with a lot of those folks to this day.
And was that Dukakis?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
That's really crazy. I think that the one thing on this show that we have come to realize is that everybody's path is unique, and they're all a fabric of all these unique paths. There's not a direct path. And I think
That's
when
right.
you look at what you've done with Game Power and what you've done with mentorship, like there's not a textbook. You can back and go to GW and get a campaign management uh executive degree of some kind, because me and you both
Yeah.
spoke at those classes. But there's not really a playbook of you're supposed to do it this way, and you go get the internship. You're probably not getting paid for that internship. You do a time as a field, associate, then maybe become a deputy field. Like everybody's path is so different. We know my story of going through the union, never going to college, figuring out my life, being a teenage father. Like nobody would have dreamed in your family or my family when we were in high school and middle school that this would be where we would end up. And I
No.
think a lot of people out there that's watching this, and especially for folks that you mentor, you should know that there's not a right or wrong way to do this. If you have passion and you want to really do something that's meaningful, politics is an easy way to see that you can actually affect people's lives. And I think that that's why what we've done, we've always like, I'll think of it like a road movement for those of you watching In and Out, where we would cross paths for a while, then we'd go do something with our firms and do this other. Then, oh, do you know this woman named Amy Pritchard? I was like, oh yeah, I've known, but do this thing, and uh, it actually would turn into me ended up in Africa with my wife looking at gorillas, but that's a story for another day. Of like, you're the only person I know that spent all this time in Africa. But anyway, I want to go back to Game Power and talk about what me and you have talked about for a long time, and making it topical to where we are today is that we are professionals, and we're professionals in the Democratic Party, and we are quote unquote consultants. My wife likes to remind me that nobody knows what a consultant is, and that why do you say you're a consultant? What do you do? What do you do that people pay you money to do? I put that on Twitter this week because lots of folks say they're consultants and advisor, but I don't think if you're not getting paid to do that, you're just somebody who likes to talk a lot on Twitter or on this platform. Um, as you think about what we're seeing in consulting today, tell me how you've seen it change for the better or the worse, and how does that lead into the position to where you were just at in Maine and what we're living through as a party in Maine?
Yeah, no, thank you for that because I just came back literally minutes ago from Maine. I was not up there for the Senate race, but I happened to visit with some folks who were working in this case for Troy Jackson. But mostly I just sat up there stewing, and I was stewing because I'm angry that we don't have a nominee and the process that we just went through um, with Graham Patner. And, I mean, most of what can be said about him has been said. That's not my place. But I think that I mean, there's two types of consultant. You and I both know this. First of all, when people say, "What do you do as a consultant?" I'm like, it's just an easy way to say I'm not unemployed because I can be paid or not be paid, and I've certainly been paid a fair amount, and I've had plenty of time where I haven't been paid, and I can still say I was a consultant the whole time. But I think consulting has changed both for the better and the worse. I think that I think more people doing this work is a good thing. I think our democracy is imploding and exploding simultaneously. And that has had a huge ripple effect, but more money means more organizations, more campaigns, which means more people, more staff, etc. And if folks haven't read this, I really encourage folks to look at Amanda Littman wrote a piece on this about a week or so ago that I think was a really important piece. And I'm going to write I've already written, I just haven't shared it, a complimentary piece to follow up to it. But, the one of the reasons there are so many consultants now is because there's not stable jobs, right? It's very easy. It's one of the only ways to create stability. I'm not sure stability is still what we either of us have in this moment, even though we're pretty well established at this point in our careers, right? It's still very unstable. But it is a way to have a work-life balance that is very difficult to do when you're a campaign staff. It just is. That's just the nature of the campaign side of the work. And so, like I said, on the good side, I think more people doing this work is good. I think more people, more different kinds of consultants is good. I also think there's a lot of sketchy, bad consultants out there, and not so much bad like they're bad people, though there's certainly some of those, but it's more just bad practices and stuff being done because there isn't a body that really regulates it. I mean, there's AAPC, and I say this with no shade or disrespect to them, but that's a bipartisan group that doesn't always reflect the people who do the work because not everyone belongs to it, but they do some of it, but they're really the only ones. And Campaign Selections Magazine, creates some space for consultants, but that's it. We don't have anything just on our side. So that's something we're just trying to work on with Gain Power. Um, and one is, I say this not to, I mean, I want to bring more consultants together to create better practices and create some standards that we can all self-regulate, not to bring down the boom on anyone, but I'm frustrated with Maine in particular. I'm not a Mainer. I am, as you maybe I can't remember if this was on when you said this, but I'm a masshole, which is I grew up just down the road from Maine. I spent a lot of time going to Maine as a kid, and I have spent as a politico, both as a campaign manager and a consultant, a lot of time doing politics in Maine. And I can tell you, as someone who has spent, like I said, a lot of time there, but I don't pretend to be a Mainer. Mainers are real sensitive about who's from Maine, and if you're not from Maine, you're from away. So I'm from away. I'm a masshole from away. Um, and what just happened with the Plattner campaign in having consultants from away recruiting a candidate to run, I think is problematic, and we've seen the outcome of it. And I don't see consultants being the folks who should be recruiting anyone. Not that they can't be part of it, not that we can't be part of it. But the way that went down was not good for our party, not good for our democracy, and not good for consultants. I don't think when there's bad stories about consultants, I think it hurts all of us. I don't know what you think on that, but
No, I think you hit on something that's really important. Like, I think that's been the biggest change in the industry is folks and young folks who are starting these consulting firms, to your point, of folks who, don't have a regular job, they put up a shingle, that means opens an LLC, and they start figuring out, like, "How can I go get candidates?" And they'll call me and say, "Chuck, can you give me advice?" Is I'm one of the few people who've built a firm from nothing and have kept it going somehow miraculously, and being one of the only minority-owned firms. I've said the thing that kills us is that when somebody decides they wanna run for something, as soon as I find out or you find out, and I try to figure out a way to get to them, they always have all their consultants hired. And then I come to find out that it was those consultants who knew somebody who actually helped get them in, and they've been talking to them for years, or they can put somebody on an airplane and fly them across the country when somebody just files an intention form that me and Amy can't do and regular working class folks can't do. That part of it bothers me a lot because I think it closes the door for lots of folks, well-intentioned young people. These are going back to gain power. Like, there's not a way for young folks who have a new firm to do this. Well, you say, "Well, Amy had a firm. She's done fine. You've had a firm." But it's because I spent 14 years in the labor movement and built connections. Amy literally came from nothing, knew people in Massachusetts. Her governor run, she meets those people. She gets involved with AFL-CIO, she meets those people. And along the way, kids, young people, old people, when folks say, what's the most important things in business and politics and making your way in DC? And I tell people, your contacts are your currency. The,
100%.
the folks that you meet along the way, they're the ones who are going to make sure you have work because that's another reason not to be an asshole. Because people remember the assholes, people who are really full of themselves. And if you show up in your own time and you're nice and you work hard, man, that goes a long way. And folks think that it can't be that simple because it's Washington, D.C. And I will tell you, and I'm not going to put this on Amy, so I will put this on myself. If Chuck Rocha can make it, and I've never been to college, and you all know that I'm way too mouthy and I have to ask for forgiveness a lot. I've apologized to people. Hell, I have apologized to Amy. I've apologized to lots of people because I'm mouthy and I get mad and my temper gets the best of me. But people remember that. They remember that you apologized. They remember that you were nice. They remember that you showed up on time. They remember that you called and spoke truth to power. But you actually kept every card that was ever given to me for 20 years. And I would send people stuff on their birthday, tell people something on Facebook that's nice. It goes a long way in building a firm. I'm going to move to the second topic because this is another part of Maine that bothers me. And it's really been bothering me if you've watched my Twitter the last week or two. And it is that being a working class kid who grew up in a trailer house in East Texas to a 15-year-old mom and living through all the trauma that I know is trauma now, not till I was 50 did I realize it was trauma,
Mhm.
that watching folks go out and quote unquote recruit working class candidates, whether they're working class or not, I'm not the working class police. But I know there's a lot of real working class people that would make amazing electeds, but they'll never get that opportunity because they don't have the connections, the contacts, or think they can afford a consultant. It drives me crazy to watch folks who are well intentioned try to think that they know everything about working class people because they wrote a thesis about it or because they've got a lot of modeling or polling that tells them what working class people should be about, like an oyster farmer from Maine. Not that he's bad or anybody around him is bad. I'm just saying that that currently right now just chaps my ass, Amy.
I feel you. No, I really do. I mean, look, I grew up in a area. I'm sitting in it right now, Cambridge, Massachusetts. I grew up Cambridge, Belmont, and we are fiercely. I dropped Tip O'Neill and Kennedy's. Like we're a fiercely political space. Like while my family wasn't political, and I kind of fell and stumbled into it, but the truth is, it was a little bit. But not everyone in the world is like that. Certainly, not everyone in the country is like that. That have these sort of legacy people and families that are in politics. It never occurred to me, honest to God, until I went and worked at the DCCC where I did candidate recruitment, that you had to do candidate recruitment, that was even a thing, right? And I remember when I was legit my job for a year before it became my job to support the people who were actually running. You know, but even that was weird, right? Sending some kid from DC from a party to states and, I mean, it made some sense because I represented the party better than being a consultant. But again, from away, whatever place I happened to go into, and I just went around and I really just talked to folks who I thought were smart and connected and just said, who do you think should run? And went around and said, who do you think should run? And somehow 2, 3 names would pop up. And if everyone said the same name, I might reach out to that person. I didn't go and, profile a candidate before I got there and just try to knock on someone's door and say, hey, you should run, you know? And again, we could go off on this unfortunate, really terrible case for, I think, a number of reasons. I mean, you talk about being trapped. Sorry. I just can't with the white men, this sort of brawny, we need the bro to run, and it's not the working class part that pisses me off. I want more working class. I want more regular folks, from all kinds of backgrounds. We have too many lawyers and too many billionaires and too many folks who don't understand the communities they live in and come from, the voters they represent. But this recruiting thing is just interesting because there are places where you do need to recruit. It's just not a natural thing. And I give again, it'll be the second time I'm mentioning Amanda Littman and Run for Something, but there's other groups, you know, there's a whole network. Denise Fariozzi is in this. There's the lead groups, and there's things from the Victory From, and our friends over at the Collective. I mean, there's folks that have really honed into specific types of candidates, whether it's African American, whether it's Latino, whether it's women, whether it's young people. I'm glad to see this proliferation of people encouraging people to run for office. I think that's actually super awesome. You know, that part's super cool. But this notion of consultants, piloting in and looking for clients, they're not looking for candidates, they're looking for clients. Anyway,
Let me ask you
yeah.
this. I love it. I love it so much. I love the mass energy. I love that big old dog barking in the background because I've met and petted that giant dog.
Yeah,
Anyway,
sorry. Yeah.
it's good. It makes it very real. Um, what advice, if there's people that listen to this Substack, who read your Substack, who look at, advice from seasoned operatives like us, um, and now you've had this organization where you've been out mentoring people, connecting people and stuff. When you have these young people around you, and I should also say hosting the award show y'all do every year as well, with Game Power, what is the leading advice that you like to leave with all of these folks? Because I'm always moved by all these young folks who are around, who are just hungry to be there. Oh, Chuck Rocha this and Amy that. They look at us like we're somebody. Like, what advice do you always have for them and for those listening now?
I mean, my biggest thing is to folks is find your passion, whatever that may be. And your passion might be a policy, it might be an issue, it might be a community. I mean, you've got your passion, Chuck, which I'm so grateful for the work that you do, mentoring
Fishing?
and
No, you're not talking
supporting
about fishing.
Latino talent.
Not
Well,
fishing?
that too, that
Okay.
too.
That too, okay.
Um, you know, but no, but about helping folks who do this work, but specifically in your case, helping Latino youth. And you did a lot more than that, particularly in the Bernie campaign and some of the other campaigns you worked on. And I mean, for me, that's my passion. I happen to be raised Catholic. On any day of the week, I really hold my faith closely. And other days, I hate my faith and the church that I'm, part of. And that's a topic for a different day. But my point is, like, I was raised part of my Christianity is a social justice and a commitment to supporting my community and people who have a lot of needs. And I just can't with this other party that even attempts to call themselves Catholic or Christian in any form or shape. But someone recently told me, and I've always been fascinated actually by Judaism too. They talked about the type of charity, and that the number one form of charity in Judaism, and I'm not going to say the words right, but is this notion of go back to fish. Teach man to fish. Uh, they eat forever, right? Versus giving them the fish. And so I didn't really. It's something I just stumbled onto pretty recently, but I think helping people find their profession, find their career path is one of the greatest things you can do, no matter what profession you're in. And then bonus for us that it's making an impact and changing your community and changing your state, changing your country and changing the world. And I really do believe that we all have that capacity no matter what background. In fact, frankly, I think someone like yourself who didn't go to school and came, I mean, I think that actually is more helpful than any Ivy League degree, honestly, because it's more connected to the people we're trying to represent. And so for me, the advice is just find your passion. And sometimes that takes a while. Your passion can also change over time. My passions have changed a little bit over time, but the one thing I'm still passionate about and why I still do this work is helping people get into the work because we need people. We desperately need people doing this work. And it's hard to find your way and it's hard to sustain your work because of the cyclical campaign cycle. Um, and like I said, the passion can be a skill, the passion can be a place, the passion can be a people, it can be a policy, and it certainly can be a combination of all of that. And I like helping people figure that out because most people they want to get by, they want to make a living. There's certainly some really ambitious folks. I talked to someone not I don't know. I do career counseling every Monday. Anyone who wants it, you can sign up. I think I put a couple hours on my calendar and anyone can sign up for it. And I do it sometimes beyond that too, but I really try to do it every week. And I was talking to someone recently who I will not name, and if they see this, they'll know who what I'm talking about, but they were someone very impressive, by the way, someone who's worked on multiple campaigns and worked in multiple states and recently run for office as well, but, is not yet 30. I kept talking about all they wanted to do was be senior. They wanted a senior job and a senior position and a senior, and I'm like, "Remind me how old you are again? Because if you think you're gonna be senior before you're 30, where you gonna go? You've already created the ceiling for yourself." You know? Um, and I'm like, that's just not a that's not an aspiration. It's not a practical aspiration, you know? I mean, say you wanna manage some people, fine, or you wanna do something that elevates yourself beyond the role that you've had today or last year, but anyway.
I think I'm pretty certain on a couple campaigns that you have been disappointed in the last 2 or 3 months. Let's think about something positive in a world where Donald Trump is sucking all the life out of all of us. Tell me about some campaigns that you're seeing out there these days that excite you and why.
You know, this probably sounds trite, but I genuinely get excited by almost every campaign on some level because I think putting yourself out there and putting your name on a ballot is a really big deal. And I get excited. You know, I was sad to see Mallory McMorrow drop from Michigan, and I get excited for people who really speak truth to power. Um, and who aren't afraid to not just take on Trump and the administration, which at this point is easy. I mean, it's hard work, but it's easy to call them out because they're just so awful, but are also willing to challenge our leaders on our party because we get a lot of work to do. So I really do like to see folks who are willing to do that. And but I'm not, you know, I'm starting to use the phrase "I'm just left of MAGA." I'm not. I'm pretty progressive. But sitting here in Cambridge, you would think I was a Republican. We have a big tent party, and I on any given day of the week, I just want authentic folks who are running because they want to represent people who need representation rather than elevate their resume and put a notch on their belt. And I think that's pretty easy to tell the difference between the 2. Um, and so, I'm biased towards women. I'm biased towards really anyone who is whether they're Black, brown, Asian. I have an affinity towards anyone that comes from an underrepresented community, but also seeks to represent them. I don't know. Like I said, I don't care whether you've got an Ivy League degree or never went to college. I don't care if you're, in a deep blue seat or red seat. I care. I like doing a lot more local races than I used to because I just feel like you get more organizers there. I think it's hard to be a true organizer at a statewide level. It depends where, but I don't know. There's some great folks out there. We've got some amazing folks in our party. Sadly, they're not the ones leading it, but we have some extraordinary talent in our party. And and I, and I think we're seeing another wave of really cool people running right now. And I think we're going to have an incredible array of presidential candidates next time too. And anybody who wants to take on the fight that needs to be fought right now. I'm literally been physically ill over what has happened to communities because of ICE and the murders that have happened. And yeah, I don't know. There's a lot. It's a whiplash on any given day of what we can care about and fight about. So people who are willing to really step up and do it, I think that matters.
I could not agree more, and I think that, you've hit on so many topics, we could probably do this for a few hours. Let me ask you a couple closing questions, though. We're talking about, like, where the campaigns have been, what excites you, what doesn't. Tell folks where they can find out more information if they wanna, support Gain Power, if they wanna get on the listserv of Gain Power. Tell folks where they would go for that.
So we're in the process. We have multiple platforms. We're in the process. Weirdly, the thing that's exciting me personally right now is the fact that I can build what I've been wanting to build for a few years. And I think, a lot of people are freaked out by AI. And again, that's a whole topic of what's happening with AI in our world, which is both terrifying and mind-blowingly amazing, wonderful all at the same time, right? But I mention it just because we're completely scraping our entire, not just our single website, but trying to consolidate into a new platform. Um, so gamepower.org is frankly our I'll call it our antiquated site. You can sign up there, but we're barely touching it at the moment. We're deep in our rebuild and hoping to be live by around Labor Day with our new site. Although candidly, it's less rushing to the election. We're prepping for the post-election, right? Most of what we're planning at the moment is about after this midterm, not between now and then, although we're certainly working to get folks placed between now and then. Um, so Gain Power is our main site. We have this beautiful platform, Substack. We have Jobs That Are Left is where, and most of our jobs are posted. That's what people know about us most, is our career center. We've had, over 6,000 organizations post jobs since we relaunched as Gain Power 6 years ago. And they're a combination of labor and consultants and candidate campaigns and party committees and some journalists and all, again, democracy focused. And we are launching a new project to back to the consultant conversation to really create community for the consultants on our side, which I feel like has been lacking. So we're excited about that because that's a big part of our rebuild. If people want a sneak peek, our new site's actually live. It's just got a lot of beta information, but that's on gamepower.app right now. And yeah, we're just trying to raise money to help train people and place them and then support them and move them, keep them in this work. Really keep them in the work.
Well, we appreciate all the work you've been doing, and I think that as we've talked about, you have created such a unique space in trying to help campaign folks get connected in jobs and to mentors and to others. I can't thank you enough. There's one fun question that we ask everybody on the way out, and since you're so close to Boston's Red Sox Stadium, then you will understand this.
Oops, you
Which,
just froze on me.
am I back? Am I back?
Yeah, you're back. You froze for just a second.
So the closing question has to do with your dear Boston Red Sox, and it is, what would be Amy Pritchard's walk-up song if you were headed to home plate?
Oh gosh,
How about
you
that?
needed to give me. Oh, I have so many. What's my
See?
favorite song? Ah,
Think about it as your pump-up song, think of it as
shit.
your workout song.
Yeah. I mean, whoa, that's not fair. I have so
Nope,
many.
that's right, you get
Uh,
one. Walk-up song. Now to the plate, coming to the plate from Cambridge, Massachusetts.
I will say this. It sounds kind of goofy but I love the happy song, because I'm happy. And I mean, there's a few songs because my moods, I get so angry and so sad about what's happening in our space that my music has to spin my mood around. Um, I can't believe I'm blanking on the name of it, but the other Justin Timberlake one that's in the similar vein that I don't know. I have a handful of songs I'm always putting on repeat, but yeah,
Well, thank you
it's a
for
good
being here
question.
today.
Now I have to have I'm gonna come back and post it, but
And from a personal thank you, me and Ebony want to thank you for helping us put together a trip of a lifetime when we got to come see you in Africa, see your nonprofits over there, be around some of your family that's over in Africa. And we got to see things that I thought I would never see in my lifetime. So if you ever want to sidebar with Amy about going to Rwanda, she knows a lot about it, spends a lot of time over there, works with the locals over there a lot. And so it was really, I call it a spiritual trip. And she told me I wouldn't be disappointed. And I've never been less disappointed with anything in my life. So thank you from me and Ebony for giving us and helping us put together a trip of a
I'm
lifetime.
so glad you came, and I hope that others will come visit too. It's a spiritual place. It's a place that certainly has transformed me. and transform how I look at the world and how I do everything really here, because of my experiences there. It's a special place. It's a really special place.
Everybody, don't forget to go to the Game Power website. Thanks, my friend Amy, for joining me today. And until next week, we'll see you later on the Rocha Revolution.
Much
See ya.
love. Appreciate you. Love
Be
to
good.
Ebony too. And thanks to everyone.
You
Have a
got it.
good night.